welcome to today's webinar. Sorry for the little delay here. I am Skylar with Lean Frontiers. On our screen, you can see Jim with Lean Frontiers, Oscar and David. Just a quick reminder, you will receive a link from me within 24 to 48 hours. That does come directly from my email. And Oscar, I believe we are kind of at a stopping point, so you can take it over.
Good on you. Thanks, Skylar. We had a few issues. As you can see, Dave's here twice because his sound is not working through his computer. So the picture is through the computer and the other blank David is his sound. So apologies for a little bit of a late start. That was what was going on, trying to work that out. So Dave Hill is a versatile team lean systems professional with demonstrated success building organizational capability and learning organizations in automotive, e-commerce, construction, logistics, chemical, aerospace, and healthcare industries. When we were discussing this webinar last week, Dave said to me that he feels thrilled and privileged to work for an organization that totally supports and loves what he's doing. He is a very lucky man. So in the background to the webinar on the Lean Frontiers website, it says, 2 Cornerstone sites are fighting to achieve process stability, step function improvement, and steady improvement in safety, quality, delivery, cost, and growth in a turbulent market. Dave, can you please firstly reflect or tell us a bit about Cornerstone and introduce us to that fight? Let us know a little bit about that fight.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm going to share my screen here real quick. It may provide a little bit of context for you. So Cornerstone Building Brands, and let me know if you can see my screen.
We can, but we can't see the PowerPoint.
Okay. How's that?
That's good.
Cornerstone Building Brands is North America's largest manufacturer of exterior systems for low-rise and residential construction. So everything from windows, vinyl siding, metal accessories, turnkey stone solutions, and metal roofing, wall systems, and building solutions. So I work for the Apertures division, or the line of business, which is windows. So vinyl windows for all kind of applications. So we also have been recently recognized as by Newsweek as one of the greatest workplaces in the U.S. And I wholeheartedly agree. It was a nice background, but a little bit about my background and how I got into this. Cornerstone, I've been with them about a year and a half as part of the CI team. I'm a regional CI manager. And just by way of my whole history of work and life at work and why we're talking today, I think I've been in lean systems for about 30 years, starting in automotive, and then really getting full force as an internal instructor and teacher at Ingersoll Rand, DSM internationally, and working a little bit in lean logistics. And then I got my chance to build this system from the ground up in a couple of past lives. Ketter comes to mind, Train, and in healthcare, a little dabbled in it a little bit. But it wasn't until 2018 that I really fully was able to experience training within industries, which is kind of late. If you look at lean systems being foundationally supported by training within industries, which was under our nose for a long time until it was rediscovered again with Patrick Gropp and TWI Institute in the early 2000s. So
David, just before you get into that detail, tell us a little bit about that fight that you mentioned, because I think that interests me and I suspect it interests others.
In the top part.
Yeah.
So
you said.
So I'm sorry. Yeah, there's a Shu Ri is kind of a metaphor for content mastery. So I've been a student of lean systems, I think, since '92, really, at Delta Faucet when I was there as an intern. But in automotive, you kind of, in any realm of mastery, you this is kind of a martial arts metaphor that's used often for gaining competency and efficacy. So Shu is you kind of learn the rules and the basics of the system, standardized work. process studies, line balancing, standard work combination sheets, standard work capacity tables, all the tools, and you follow the rules as under an experienced teacher, and then you begin like a black belt. You kind of break out of that, and now you're able to test the boundaries of the art form or the system or whatever you're learning, and then you can kind of transcend the rules and start using your own techniques and combine things. And I think I was there, but there was something really missing for me. And I discovered it at Ketter, where I was able to launch TWI with some very, very strong practitioners to build onboarding systems and really compress training time and slash turnover and increase product quality and throughput. So, but we were talking about getting back to the basics, and that's kind of where I think those of us who've been in the field for a while start going back and returning to really teach and master the basics after we've learned the complicated part.
So in the fighting to achieve process stability, step function improvement, and steady improvement in safety, what were the symptoms of that fight? What were you seeing?
Well, I think, we often talk about standardized work being the entry point for learning, but basic stability, I think we're a company of acquisitions with a lot of people in different uh, steps in their learning curve. So I think that was one of the first things, is achieving basic stability, especially in a soft market with a lot of turnover. The post-pandemic, we saw a lot of people just choosing not to enter the workforce. So we have almost an identical labor crisis, or a very similar one to the one that started TWI in the first place in World War II, when we lost most of our factory workers. Now we're entertaining people into manufacturing who've never stepped foot in a factory before. So very similar.
Yeah, right. So in prior discussions, you've referred to the two J's and you do in the intro on the Lean Frontiers website, you refer to the two J's as countermeasure risk mitigation skills.
Yep.
I really love that, but it's not common. Can you tell us a bit more about that view of the J's, that they're the countermeasure risk mitigation skills?
Yep. And
real quick, gentlemen, before you get going, people have been asking if you could put that in regular presentation mode so they can see the slides better.
Thank you. First of all, let's see if I can. Boy, I'm not used to Zoom. I'm a Teams guy. Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's the one to the right of the circle with the dots. Duplicates slideshow. Hit duplicate slideshow. Now up the top.
Okay.
Display settings. Display duplicate slideshow.
Very good. Is that better?
Yep.
Yes.
Thanks. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm not.
So the question was, tell us a bit more about your view as the two J's as countermeasure risk mitigation skills. And by the way, if anyone has questions for David, I've got a couple here, obviously, but if anyone has questions, please submit the questions into the chat box.
So risk mitigation, I think we were talking a little bit about any deviation from nominal or target is a loss to society or people at large. But you look at the variation that we self-inflict by the lack of basic stabilization techniques, job relations, building foundations for good employee relations, and then solving problems not only fairly and equitably, but also in a way that strengthens your problem-solving muscle through PDCA. That's a very powerful tool. We'll talk about that in a sec. And then job instruction is a standardized way that is a rigorous method to ensure that the best way is translated in the way our minds were designed to receive information. So the reason this worked so well in World War II was it engages all senses, the visual, the kinesthetic, and the auditory. And it gets past the theory right to practice. It's just kind of like a Brazilian jiu-jitsu kata or something, a move that you can repeat and operationalize over and over. So if we look at risk of defects, risk of losing people that we could have made our wildly, fanatically loyal employees. Those are the kind of risks that we want to put our best foot forward at Cornerstone to make sure that we give everybody the best possible onboarding experience, but also we train for different reasons. We train for people moving from departments, for turnover, for retirement, for backfill, for all kinds of reasons. So this lean systems, we often enter at that standardized work. And that's
Have
the
you
real risk.
just on something you just said? Have you found that that particular J's can be assigned to particular risks, or do you find that the job relations, for example, helps with all risks and job instruction as well, or do you find that certain that the skill or the practicing of J's assigned to can be attributed to the management of particular risks? What's your experience there?
The short answer is they're all integrated. So you experience, and I think your website from your partners, TWI's client, Ernest and Julio Gallo, talked about pull between JI and JR. So you have to have foundation for good relations before people will follow your instruction well. And
Yes.
yeah,
Well
and
said.
yeah, as you get into JI, you'll start realizing, and as we did, wow, I'm a little rough around maybe my ability to handle, because there will be plan versus actual will inherently present a conflict of some kind, right? That you need to be able to manage and navigate. So the cultural fortifier I've heard of JR and JI are typically where we start. And I put this in here on purpose because, well,
So just hold on. Just to take a little bit further on what you've just said again, because it's something that comes up quite a bit from people, is where do we start? People often say to us or ask or bring up, where do you start, JR or JI? And it's sort of a little bit, the answer is it depends. But what was your experience and with Cornerstone? Where did you guys start? And, what was your learnings from that?
well, I have a slide for that. So if you look at, a lot of people start with standard work, and that's okay. Where you first need to define flow in terms of one item flow, and then you can standardize, and then you can put 5S around that to protect tack time or highlight abnormalities, use pull systems and visual management. But ultimately, you're going to have to train people. And if you just pick best repeatable and hope you can get there, it's not a very good plan. You need to train people to the standard. And it's just an intellectual exercise if you don't actually plan to reduce variability. So I'm going to get to that slide here in a second, but here's the 4J programs just for reference. Most people start with JI, not only because it's intuitively immediately applicable, but it rings the cash register with variability reduction. But pretty soon after that, they discover JR is really needed. So I'm going to zoom ahead a little bit. This was Paris. This was our timeline, and this is the boilerplate TWI recommended approach, right? So JI, JR, and yellow. So
Is Paris one of your sites, is it?
yeah, it's Paris, Illinois. I was going to put a
Okay,
link.
fair enough.
Just I don't have any Louvre pictures, but they have great pizza and people there. But so typically the first few months you're really acquiring the skill. We did a TWI supported prep for success workshop. We did the 10-hour course in JI and JR very close together. It was a fairly aggressive plan. As you can see, typically you feather in JR in month 3 or 4. And then you're really building skill through projects. So we chose a project approach with this, which was line balancing, which was really requires leveling and distributing the work so people aren't standing around. We liberate people from waste. And we found a lot of productivity through that. But ultimately, you need to support that with training. And so we in Paris, I think we also talked a little bit about today about the building a learning center. We piloted Paris for how to do onboarding, but also training correctly relative to our line of business in a world-class training center. I have a few pictures of that.
Dave, just a question on this. The JI skills building, the first blue line, and the JS pilot 1 and 2, were they the same people who went through that? The same participants?
We actually, so
And,
as
and
a,
what level of the business were they?
yeah, so we, for the kickoff meeting, we tied people in remotely. So Jamie Smith from TWI Institute came in. We had all levels of management at Paris, but also our very fortunate to have Keith Scherzer, our senior VP of operations and apertures, kick it off, as he's had experience in it before. I think with Masco Corporation, a couple other past lives he's used it. So we also strategically seeded some pre-selected people from different plants, 6 different plants in my region, who would be go through the 10-hour course and also be earmarked for pilot project development and skill acquisition, and then later
JI and JR, those people.
JI
They
and
did, but
JR. So yeah,
the same groups of 10 did both.
yep. And so we had the strategically seeded people from other plants, but the core plant, we had a cohort, 2 cohorts go through JR. One was more of a frontline leader supervisor course, and then we had the top management of the site go through that, just for comfort level of talking about, because you go through people problems and you work the kata, the pattern of problem solving. So it's kind of standard. And also we want the leadership. It's kind of dangerous sometimes if you become less sophisticated than your frontline people in lean thinking. I think this takes deep personal engagement at all levels. So that's what we did. And the team there, Rick Bontrager, Leah, the plant manager, Liam, we picked a team member from accessories to become ultimately our training coordinator and go through the JI course. I'm super proud of those guys. But so we've looked at line balancing on 3 different lines. We're seeing step function productivity. I have some summary results for you, but we were able to copy. We picked the line that we did because it was kind of the vanilla of our product line across multiple sites, and we were able to leverage learnings onto a vertical startup of a additional line, and then we're going to ramp it up to 2 shifts. So the productivity, the payback, if was
just
about
a couple of points before you go on. Just a couple of points. One is that vertical startup you've mentioned. I don't want you to go into that now, please, but maybe that's something, because you're presenting a case study or an extension of this at the summit in April, the TWI summit. So perhaps that's something you could delve into there, because I know that was something that Gallo Wines talked about. This vertical startup and using JI there. And I know that's a pretty wide interest to people because they're confronted with it a lot. But the other thing I'm interested in is you mentioned a very senior leader getting involved at the start.
Mm-hmm.
So what was their involvement ongoing, or did they just kick things off?
Several senior leaders. So I have some pictures of these gentlemen too. So Keith Scherzer, who's our senior VP of operations, Gustavo Chofi, who's our senior VP of quality and CI. This is all backed by our CEO Rosalie and John Wallace, our senior VP of operational excellence. We had Chris Flint, who's a friend of mine and a dear friend, and we worked together for 13 years or so, and he's our director of operations in Aperture. So he actually attended as well. Physically went through the JI 10-hour course and
really? Okay.
demonstration. Yeah. So I'm trying to get him signed
That's
up
good.
for JR. So Chris, if you're listening out there, he's pretty busy today, but I think he's traveling. But I think I might have some folks from both sides. So as I mentioned, that level setting the expectation, determining the 5 W's and 1 H, who, what, where, and why, and how, what the roles would be during the implementation, the pilot area, getting a sense of the baseline metrics. That was all set up from the beginning. So,
and did those senior guys maintain touch throughout these what we see in front of us on the screen? And if so, how did they? What was their cadence for doing that?
We're kind of building a little bit more regimented cadence, but there were several site visits where we shared both testimonials from the frontline folks in person.
Okay.
Obviously, the training center was once you see it, you'll understand why it was a pretty big deal. We built it out of material from our sister plants, so we do siding, and it's all built from Cornerstone material. We actually collaborated as well from a site in Calgary to where they had a fantastic training center. Stuart Hollingsworth came down and went through that with us. So we strategically kind of seeded people in at the beginning, but the cadence has been regular monthly report outs easily through multiple channels. And
are those numbers across the top month?
Yes,
month
yeah,
one, month
are.
two.
Yep.
Yeah, right.
That's just the standard month, and that's kind of the timing we had. It's kind of the high level. I want to kind of highlight a little bit about how the other ways we're communicating to leadership. So every site that has gone through TWI JI is doing line balancing. So this is a standard, you've developed the standardized work through, the typical tools, and then developing standardized work is really how you integrate JI and JR in your system. So I think that's probably where we're fine tuning the most before we're about ready next week to engage multiple plants in other regions and apertures to start kicking this off. And I've been seated as the primary trainer for JI and JR.
Well, that's perfect because, again, you can elaborate on that, your learnings from that at the summit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what I understand you to be saying is that previous slide was a pilot, if you like, foundational, and you'll take the learnings from that into these other ones, and that'll be a brilliant thing for you to be able to cover at the summit coming up in April, which would be great. Now, we do have a question that I don't want to miss from Nicholas Gordon. When people registered, they could submit a question. And Nicholas Gordon asked, what have been the biggest pitfalls when changing a training culture?
I think one of the biggest ones is just the still after it's reached a little bit of critical mass, the name TWI itself sounds a little exotic and different, and it has.
It's funny. There's a couple of us who are thinking about that in detail at the moment. Richard Abercrombie, who some of the people watching may know, but it's an interesting point you've raised. Keep going.
Yeah, and I think just a lot of us, including me, you look at my timeline, and I missed it. I missed TWI. It's foundational. It's not like extracurricular. If you want to do lean the hard way and struggle, go ahead and just try to do standard work without it. And there's a thing you can do TWI without lean, but not lean without TWI. And it's true. And I mean, I've struggled. I've been in those, but I think I don't know if you can see me or just the slide, but I was going to
see both.
Demonstrate something real quick. I think a lot of people have gotten to later on in their operations career, or people who develop training systems without seeing this work, and it's a little threatening for some people who missed that. And it was at first. I remember Mike Bramall, my coach, came in, and I invited him, and they were doing baseline assessments, and we were having dinner. And, I was trying to, assure him how smart I was in lean systems. He was like, yeah, just wait. So it's a little bit threatening. I think sometimes it's like, if you haven't been through it, you're afraid of what you don't know. And then when you go through it, you're like, there's this big epiphany.
Do you think that's where JR comes in a little bit? And, and I think it often is, if you're, in terms of changing a training culture, if we practice the foundations of JR, it's going to allow people to handle the confrontation a little bit more easily. It doesn't necessarily negate the fact that it's confronting, but it certainly helps.
Yeah, it's really funny because if I would have been better equipped with JR, I probably would have handled the situation better. I
exactly
introduced it to an HR director in Canada, I think, and they had an adult learning theory class, and there's no real direct link other than theoretical, learning styles and here's how adult learners can learn. JI, JR, all the J programs have the theory in there, but they just get right to practice. I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
it's like judo. You have to do it over and over again. It's a repeatable algorithm that you master through practice. It's like swimming. You can't do it
Yeah.
until you get in and do it. But I remember I called TWI. I was really kind of panicked because I was like, I can't get through to this person, and Jamie Smith answered the phone at TWI, and I said, how do I get this director involved? He goes, just do the fire underwriters not, and that's a classic thing we do in TWI. It's a simple job.
Yeah.
And we tell them how to do it to show default negligent training, the 193 word speech. I won't let the cat out of the bag for those who haven't been through the JI course, but it's a 15-minute thing where you show them how training without a plan works, just telling
So
alone.
is this what you mean is you would have gone about it this way? That's how you would have told people in advance,
Yes,
which is
yeah,
the JR Foundation. That's how you would have done that in terms of preparing them a little bit or preparing the mind for what's coming with JI. Is that what
for
you're
sure,
saying?
for sure. And at the time I didn't have it, and Jamie was like, just do the fire underwriters now. I'm like, yeah, okay. Yeah, I could have, provided better foundations for what to expect, and then, of course, acknowledged them for the good stuff that they had. There was a lot of great training material, and TWI is one of many ways to train, and it just happens to be super concentratedly effective.
If it's
So
practiced,
if it's
it's not a
practiced
silver
right,
bullet.
yeah, and that's the thing that we're learning. That's the Achilles heel you'll develop quickly is if you're not getting teams in and getting through the reps and scrubbing breakdowns and testing them and going back to the drawing board a little bit, doing content compression, going back out, you're not experiencing the PDCA scientific process, which is actually fun when you get good at delivering with the 4-step method and a breakdown. You can kind of detach yourself and kind of watch what's going on because you're watching an experiment.
I was about to say, what you're saying here is super important. What I understand you to be saying is when you're getting practicing with JI, and you go out and apply the pattern or practice the pattern, that is in itself an experiment, particularly early on.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a brilliant way of looking at it. I love it.
Well, you can see it here, and I'm just going to kind of I don't have a view to a clock, so if I'm running,
We've got 2 minutes left, and we will finish at the bottom of the hour.
Okay, I'm just going to show you some pictures, some highlights. We did go through our pilot line and upgraded our skills matrix into a timetable for training, which is actually a forward-looking capacity planning document versus a rear view mirror state indicator.
Which is what it should be.
Yeah, and the Paris site also developed a JIB pipeline, and we integrated to a standardized work document. Actually, it's we took a page from the Lego book. Lego has a famous book with TWI Institute on how they bubbled up the confirmation level process document to combine aspects of the job instruction breakdown. So without diluting the scientific background work of the detailed standardized work with times. We did develop workstations, and
David, we do have 30 seconds left.
Yeah, and again, I'm not going
to. And I need to summarize a bit.
Yeah, sure. I'm not going to get to Toledo, but this is the basically the training system developed dedicated for that. So I'll stop and
good on you.
Let you drive.
So one question has come in, but it might be a bit late. Well, I don't know about the presentation itself, but what I would encourage people to do is to consider registering for the summit. David, amongst others, is going to be presenting at the TWI summit, and that's your opportunity to go and see, to listen to what David has to say, which will be a deeper dive into what you've heard. But more importantly, grab him on the side after he's presented or before, and that's the opportunity, as in all our summits, when you can really start to understand what's going on beneath the surface, which is the important stuff. So thank you, David. I appreciate the time you've put in here. And again, I encourage people to consider coming to the summit and meeting the likes of David, who are a wealth of knowledge and experience when it comes to this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So thanks, David. Skylar or Jim, did you want to add anything in there?
Real quick, just remember that there will be a link to view the recording within 24 to 48 hours. That does come from me. Oscar and David, thank you again for today. Thank you for everybody who participated in the webinar. Jim, do you want to say something?
Just thank you very much, gentlemen. Well done. And we look forward to seeing people at the summit in April.
Hope to see you
Very
there.
good.
Bye.
Good on you. Thanks, guys. Thank
Great
you,
day.
everyone.